Hello, I want to welcome everyone participating in today's webinar, DCA's annual update. For some reason, my video is not working, so I apologize about that, but I'm not necessary. My name is Paul Calabrese, and I'm a principal here at GRF. Today, I'm joined by two very special guests, Peggy Galindo from DCA and Cy Alba from PilieroMazza. We will start with Peggy introducing herself and Cy, and lastly myself. So Peggy, could you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Peggy Galindo. I'm a customer specialist at DCAA, Defense Contract Audit Agency. As a customer specialist, I work with the non-DoD group and also with the small business group. As a non-DoD, my role with the non-DoD is that we provide assistance and audit services to non-DoD agencies such as Department of State, Department of Energy, in Treasury, you name it. As a small business coordinator, I'm the one that organizes and coordinates all the education and presentations on the topics that DCAA covers. And I also provide training to the commanding officers, Army, Navy, Air Force, on the type of DCAA audits and procedures to complete those audits. I've been with DCAA since 2009. My experience includes working as a supervisor, trainer, a specialist in quality, and now this a new role that I accepted. Prior experience uh, in the business area, I used to be incredible, but true, more than 20 years ago, I used to be a contractor myself for Department of Justice as a certified linguist providing those services. And I have a lot of experience in the banking industry where I used to also provide portfolio management advice. And thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, thanks everybody again. Just to mirror what Paul was saying, my name is Cy Alba. I'm a partner with the law firm of PilieroMazza. I've been working for federal contractors, mostly small to mid-sized firms, but some larger as well, and private equity groups and things of that nature for over 20 years, and helping them with all aspects of government contracting, including dealing with some of the sort of thorny issues we're going to be talking about here, M&A, protest claims, you name it, all kinds of compliance issues, investigations across the board. So happy to be here, and know we're going to get a lot of good information.
Thank you, Cy. Again, my name is Paul Calabrese. I'm a principal with GRF CPAs and Advisors, where I serve as a subject matter expert supporting government contractors. So thank you both for joining me. We have a lot of great stuff to share with everyone today. So we'll move to the next slide. All right, some housekeeping items that we have to deal with. Participants seeking CPE credit today must complete and submit a short survey that will appear automatically following the webinar. To obtain CPE, please participate in each of the polling questions throughout the session so we can gauge your active participation. If you experience any issues with the polling questions, please respond via the chat function so that we have documentation of your engagement. Please note that this webinar is not intended as financial or legal advice. This is simply for educational purposes.
Yeah, and just jump in again a little bit about PilieroMazza. Again, we as a firm help mainly government contractors, but commercial companies as well nowadays. We have about 50 some odd lawyers across the country at this point in all manner of different practice groups. Again, mostly government contracting, but also we do a lot of merger and acquisition, both commercial and in the GovCon space. We have a construction practice, a standard commercial litigation practice, a labor and employment practice, which does both GovCon and standard labor and employment, and sort of assist companies, small to mid-sized and some larger companies, as sort of a virtual in-house counsel to assist them with all manner of things. So that's a little bit about PilieroMazza.
Okay. We are GRF CPAs and advisors based out of Bethesda, Maryland, serving clients in the DMV as well as nationally and internationally. With more than 30 years of experience serving government contractors, GRF provides specialized expertise to help businesses enhance compliance, streamline reporting, and strategically position themselves for growth in an increasingly complex regulatory environment. Our dedicated government contracting practice, integrating advisory, audit, and tax services, combines deep knowledge of DCA requirements, FAR compliance, and industry best practices to deliver proactive guidance that strengthens internal controls, improves audit readiness, and supports long-term success. With that, we would like to thank everyone for attending today's discussion. We encourage you to follow us on social media at GRFCPAs and visit our website for upcoming events and alert. Please remember to complete the survey that will appear automatically following the session if you'd like to earn CPE credit. Thanks again and have a great day. Okay, Peggy, take it away.
Hey, Paul, just wanted to jump in here real quick. It looks like Peggy has dropped off the call. She might be experiencing some technical difficulties. I wonder if maybe we could do a couple of Q&A questions first, just to fill in the time a bit.
Okay. Okay, I need my video back. Okay, we're sorry, folks, but we lost DCA. Right when we needed them, they disappeared. And I know all of you just can't wait to have them show up at your office, but this was a key point. So I noticed even when she was talking, there were some serious, it looked like she was coming and going a little bit. So if there's any Q&A on some questions, again, I totally apologize for this. But until we get her back, she's the one to do the presentation. So, Nathan, do you have any questions that people had asked? Maybe we could go through that a little bit.
Yeah, so it looks like we did just get one question in the chat. This is about the new ICE model template in regard to automation. I don't know if you guys have any insight on that.
No, unfortunately, I haven't seen the new ICE model. I typically tend to use any of the ICE models. That's for the incur cost audit to settle your yearly indirect rates. And they are useful. Some people take that ICE model and embellish it a little bit. I tend to use it the way it comes out from DCA because DCA is the one that's going to be looking at, and I want it to be comfortable for them. Wow. Why don't we just move the slides along? We do have the slide deck, fortunately, and I don't know when she'll come back. And so why don't we just do it? I have reviewed it a little bit. So this is the overview of today of what DCA will talk about, who they are, their mission and vision. There was a reorganization, and then there's a focus on their 2026 initiatives. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So we all know that DCA conducts the contract audits for contractors, And they do a variety of services through the contract life cycle. Fortunately, I did work with them years ago, and I would tell you that certainly it begins with a proposal audit. If you have people come in, they may look at your proposed indirect rates at that point. They may also do provisional billing rate reviews, as some of you have to do. So if you have CPFF contracts, you know you're going to be dealing with DCA a lot more than if you do not have CPFF contracts. In fact, some people wonder why DCA hasn't knocked on the door. And often that's the reason, because you have either fixed price contracts, not DOD, and you're not a prime. So if you're a sub, you won't be seeing DCAA. So those are some of the reasons. Of course, they all do an incur cost audit, or they have assistance with an independent public accounting firm. And so those people really help them to catch up the audits. One of the things we're trying to figure out, and hopefully we get Peggy back, or else this will get a little interesting, is that there was the Doge, and that impacted. I guess we could go to the next slide. Let's see where they're at. But Doge impacted them. I think they had a reorganization, which we'll go into in a minute. And we also know that they had impact because of the government shutdown last fall. And so a lot of us are wondering, are incur cost audits delayed? Will they use more independent public accountants? That could be an issue. I think the mission of DCA is pretty clear. It's advisory in nature. Often they advise the ACO, the Administrative Contracting Officer. As you know, with Defense or Department of War now, the ACO, the Administrative Contracting Officer, is a lot bigger function. Every function within DOD, they have DCMC, DLA, that works with DCA. So most times DCA is advisory, and then they may determine the final indirect rates, or the ACO may. So let's flip the slide to the next one and see what's up. So again, one thing I would say about DCA, and when I even was with them many, many years ago, is they were always on the cutting edge of technology. So hopefully at some point, maybe they'll even include AI in their programs. But I remember they were always way, way ahead of industry. Maybe now they're a little bit behind. Even today, the fact that they're not just talking to, a state CPA society, they're open to speak to private firms, I think is really kind of like a step forward in their outreach to government contractors. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right. Hopefully you're listening.
Hey, Paul. It looks like Peggy has rejoined the chat.
Okay, great.
I'm not sure if she's able to hear us.
Yes, I can hear you guys. I was trying to get connected through the phone, but it gave me the message that everybody has been muted.
Peggy, that may be if you're joining from an attendee link versus a panelist link. On my end, though, I can hear you just fine. So I assume that everyone else can as well.
Okay, so hopefully we can definitely, continue with this presentation. Although, Paul, I have to say you were doing an excellent role here, starting with those slides.
Thank you.
Okay, so for those of you, Paul just mentioned about, and show you some of those slides in the presentation about that, what is our mission, what we work with. For those of you that are not familiar with DCAA or has very little interaction with DCAA, we went through what we call a reorganization starting as October 1st of 2025. A new reorganization, we have a new director, and then this reorganization was in the works, for a couple of years before it started and being finalized in October of 2025. The prior organization of DCAA is what you see in the slides in front of you, right? This is, at that moment, we had this was the structure that DCA has. We had what we call the corporate audit directorates. Those are CADs. The CADs actually was a group of offices working with the bigger contractors out there, like Northrop Grumman. There was a CAD for Northrop Grumman, one for Lockheed Martin, one for Boeing, and consider the top big 4 or 5 of the contractors. Now we had several offices around the nation that they were working specifically with contractors performing those contracts either as a sub or as a prime under Northrop Grumman as well. So we went away from the CADs. We also had at that time, we also had what we call FD offices. Again, if you're familiar with DCAA, that means the field detachment offices were specialized offices that were cleared to work on classified contracts, either for Department of Defense or any other government entity out there. So these are a group of auditors that go to the extensive clearances to work with those type of contracts. So we went from this organization, a structure, very spread out a structure, and in the next slide, as you can see, we kind of regroup things again. So this time we said, okay, we're going to group all those offices around the nation, and bear in mind that we have around the last count, it was around 4,500 auditors around the nation, spread in many, many different offices. So what DCAA did, they did a study and they found out about that what percentage of the contractors were working in specific contracts, either with the Army, Air Force, or Navy. Remember, we are Defense Contract Audit Agency, so we emphasize in the Defense Department. So the bulk of those contractors were then grouped now, for example, for the Army under what now is known as the Land Directorate. Then you're also going to have the Sea Directorate for those working Navy contracts, and the Air Directorate for those working the Air Force contracts. I'm sorry, I'm seeing some questions in the chat. Do you want me to address some of them, or with it?
Yeah, we're good, Peggy. For people asking about the slide deck, that will be emailed out to everyone later today.
Okay. So in the next slide, you can see what the previous organization looked like. Remember what I told you about the CADs or those specific locations. So the yellow dots that you see in this map is those big offices or big CAD groups, right? That where they were located. So now when we reorganize to better provide a better service to those specialized areas, then in the next slide, you're going to see how we change our approach, highlighting specifically which areas are covered now with the new structure. Next slide, please. So this is the legend, and this is how they're going to look, right? You can see the areas in blue, which belongs to the air. Then the gray ones are land, or the green ones are land, and the dark blue is what we call the Sea Directorates. So any of those, the contractors located now in any of those states highlighted by those colors, then are receiving the specialized attention from DCAA, specifically to those type of contracts covered. That does not mean that we're not addressing, you live in the East Coast, right? And then you have a land or an Army contract. That doesn't mean that we're not going to look into it or work with it. It's just that for the better use of our resources and the proportion of our auditors, how they are spread across the nation, this is how the restructure came to be. Why did we do the reorganization? There were several benefits involved into this stage. you can see the benefits for the employees. Though you're going to have a more engaged workforce. It is true, we are trained to work in many, many different types of contracts. We're trained to work and address many audit issues that we come across different type of contracts. But then now we have a more engaging, engaged workforce. So we are providing more experiences and using actually that knowledge base that with type of contracts can provide. It's not the same thing as having maybe one auditor that used to work only on Army contracts, but now but lives in an area where actually the bulk of it is Navy contracts. And we can use that knowledge base, years of experience created over time better, to address the needs of the requesting officers for our audit services or advisory services. It's easier to find our audit location. We now, once we did all this reorganization, now we know exactly, better to find which office or DCAA's cognizant office for that specific contractor. We can either identify better that information based on the zip code. Many times I receive a lot of calls from, hey, I need to find my DCA cognizant office. I used to contact this office, but because of the new reorganization, I can assure you sometimes you're going to receive, maybe if you have an old email, right, an undeliverable notice because of that. So we are available definitely at any time. You can call me or you can call our offices and we can find the DCA office, the cognizant office for you guys. The other benefits that we found in this new reorganization is about that we're reducing the layers of management. That is basically is a streamline. We were becoming too much of a bureaucratic agency, and sometimes the processes were kind of delayed because of so many levels of approvals and reviews that we have involved. And that's one of the reasons driving this type of reorganization. Cost savings, definitely. We merge offices. We found a lot of duplicated efforts in some areas. We merge offices. We gave them, remember that we were just coming out also from the COVID time or era. So there was a lot of changes coming and happening. And when that came to be, we found out that decisions were made at that time that now they were not exactly working correctly with the new instructions or guidance from the government. So we have to change our approach and be more funding and conscious in what we can do and how we're going to be able to do it. In the next slide, what the biggest benefit that we got from our reorganization is what we call a centralized audit function. Okay, so basically, before, let me just explain a little bit on this part, is that before we used to have all those services, technical services or specialized services, residing in the headquarters office in Fort Belvoir. So many of those efforts were coordinated from the headquarters. Well, now we found that, okay, taking all those specialized services directly to the areas where they're being used is more efficient and cost saving for us. And that's what we did. So now we move people, we assign them a specific directorates. Now you're going to be the special technician for this type of audit for that specific area, or you're going to be, like in my case, a customer special, have a specialized knowledge, or you can concentrate and provide specialized knowledge into that bulk of the group that you're going to be addressing. Another for the centralized audit function, it was that the government furnished property and through negotiations type of audits is, they focus, they change the focus basically. Okay. Once we have a centralized audit function, we are going by the priorities established by Department of Defense, Department of War, and also by government priorities. And these two are in the highest priority right now. So we found that by decentralizing, we can concentrate better in those specific topics that the government has an interest in have it audited, and performance. At this point, I'm just going to stop one moment. Do you guys have any questions? I saw the polling question. Do you want me to answer that one?
Sure. Yeah, they need to first go and respond to the polling question if Nathan can pull it up for CPE, and hopefully this time it'll work. Go ahead, you can answer. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, the Dutch effect, right? Um, we all saw the news. We all went through, all that turmoil that it was happening. So let me just think. So, as a result of the various executives, orders and the Dutch directives for agencies to conduct contract reviews and engage in mass contract cancellations, there has been a flurry, I can tell you, in a big stream of terminations for convenience, unfortunately, sometimes, suspensions, stop work orders, and contract modifications. You name it. We've been receiving a lot, like crazy, from DoD agencies and even for especially also non-DoD agencies. So we provide audit and advisory services to all DoD and also non-DoD, right? So the agency, we still continue processing those requests in the terms that the Dutch cause any type of layoffs from DCAA. No, it did require for us to make sure that to streamline our services and processes, because it's asked us to definitely review the number of auditors in our workforce and determine the needs where they really are. So actually, it came at the moment that everything was being in the process for the reorganization of DCAA. So it was kind of another factor to take in consideration when the reorganization was developed, and it's still, in the developing process.
So Peggy, have the incur cost audits, I guess naturally they're a little bit backed up even more now because of the shutdown.
For the shutdowns,
Yeah, I
just
mean,
a
it's
little bit.
just
Not
a
just
little bit.
only the shutdown,
Hmm.
not only the shutdown kind of delayed us. With the first lasted what, 43 days. So
Right.
the good thing is that we were able to go back, and pick it up exactly where we left.
Okay. How about, are you still using independent public accounting firms to assist with incur cost
Uh,
audits?
the only thing is that because of the timing, yes, we do have them. Then when the shutdown happened, both of them, right? Before the first shutdown, all the agencies received instructions to prepare a plan for a possible shutdown. They were not sure that it was going to happen, but the chances were very high. So all the agencies, all federal government agencies, received instructions to prepare a plan for a continuity plan, um, to do the audits that we were working on, right? Especially the ones that were deemed to be like high priority for the government interest. So, but when that happened, all the auditors, specific designated auditors and IPA firms that DCA contracted out, then also were designated to continue with those efforts even during the shutdowns. Now, we did experience a little bit of the delays, right, in completing some of the audits. I'm not going to lie about that, but it's not a delay that we have a big backlog. We at this point, as of today, we can say that we have covered everything that, or we are at the point that we were supposed to be if the shutdown will not happen. Now, there was another point actually that it kind of affected in top of the shutdown. It was the changes in the NDAA negotiations, right? In the requirements.
Yes.
Because of that was basically the main reason for the shutdown. One of the points there is that many of the agencies were instructed now to then give those contractors extension in the timeline that they had to submit all that type of information for the government contracts, including, as you mentioned, the incur cost submissions, right?
Right.
The contractor is required to submit their incur cost submission 6 months after their fiscal year ends. So December 31st, by June 30th, you're supposed to provide your incur cost submission. If you have any problems before the June date, then you contact your contracting officer, who is the only one, not DCAA, who is the only one who has the discretion to determine to provide an extension, a time extension, to then submit your incur cost submission. So, well, guess what? Shutdown happened after that, the June 30th deadline. So when that also affected were those specific contractors that at that time were on the time crunch because of the extension, the deadline extension that they received. So in top of that, many of those agencies, including Department of Defense, extended a little bit more that timeline to help with the situation.
How long was that timeline on average that was extended, like for defense? Do you know? Was it
It
30
depends.
days
It depends
more?
on the command. It depends on the
Oh,
command
wow.
under.
Okay.
So no, it depended on the command, because again, there
Okay.
were some things, specific contracts that there were not, you couldn't wait to make decisions, because some other contracts either had to be issued, modifications or services were not to be interrupted. Remember, many of those, especially defense contract audits, contracts are for the military services that, we might need definitely to make sure that those services continue to be provided. But before analyzing that, then we need to have the correct financial information to make, a right determination. That's how the contracting officers use our audit report. So without the data to audit, they cannot make decisions on the results of those audits. So they were there were I've seen, or so far, for the bigger contractors, I saw extensions be shut down. I've seen also only extensions, only maybe 30 days. I think that that's the minimum amount that I saw. Some medium-sized contractors.
So Peggy, in the past, it seemed like if I was with defense and I wanted an extension, I might let the local office know and ask the ACO or notify the ACO. Is that normally the process?
Yes, that is correct. That is the process. The only person, the only authority to grant extensions into the submission of any type of information to DCAA is either the contracting officer representative, if they have that authority, or the ACOs, the administrative contracting officers.
Okay. And one last thing, someone had asked, at least with the incur cost audits, because that's probably the most, you know, active, I guess, audit that everyone needs, obviously, to settle yearly and year-end rates. Do you know what the average wait time is? I guess it varies by the size or the types of audits being done. But like I don't know if they still call it mobile or not, but for the small contractors, do you have any sense of how much the wait time would be? I guess you'd have to define first, they have to go through the adequacy, right? Once they submit it in the portal. So they have to submit in the portal on time. They have to have an adequacy review. But after that, if they're determined to be adequate, or can you just give at least your goals of when after adequacy?
Sure. So we are setting our own internal goals and how to complete this audits. And I'm going to be frank here. Many, many, many
Hmm.
years ago, DCA was not exactly known for a good timeline in completing those incur cost audits. Over the years, as we have improved our systems and adding more good changes in our systems and processes in how to obtain that information from the contractors, so we have reduced that time frame and the backlog on incur costs. So right now, in average, for a big contractor, and I'm talking about, I used to work as a quality assistant for reviewing the audits for Northrop Grumman. We used to take a whole year just to, right? 12 months. Now it's taking us 6 to 8 months. I'm talking about the big contractors. Now, let's just talk about small businesses, right? Small businesses obviously may not have the complexity or the complex structure as the big contractors. So maybe the amount of data that we have to go through and review obviously is not going to take as long. So I've seen Inker custom missions, finish in 3 months just for a small business. That's also going to depend on the number of contracts that you're managing, the complexity, and actually at the end of the day is also gonna come back to what exactly that contracting officer wants us to look into it. Okay, because one of the things that I really wanted to emphasize and clarify is that DCAA only performs audits to the request of a federal entity or the contracting officer of that entity. I receive a lot of calls every day that, oh, I want my my system to be audited, or I want to have an income cost and all those things. And I'm like, okay, thank you very much, right? But then you need to talk to your contracting officer, and he is the only person authorized to send that request to DCAA. And that's when we go address the request. We review exactly the needs of that contracting officer. Believe me, many of those contracting officers, they think that one audit is going to cover many things that they need. That is not true. Sometimes we have to sit down with them once we receive those requests, including the incur cost emissions, and we have to then tell them exactly and talk with them about what exactly do you want to have, what is it, your biggest concern, what is exactly how you're going to be using this information, so maybe we can tailor exactly what you need, from this information. Hello? Did I lose you?
Yeah, that was some great
Hello?
answers. Perhaps you should just
Okay.
move on to your initiatives. Thank you very much.
Okay. So for the initiatives, based on the new reorganization, also we did a plan about what we're going to be focusing on and the things that we are working in the year 2026, right? And then one of the things in the next slide, please. I mentioned this a little bit before. I think it's the one before that. Okay, so yes. So sorry. So in this on this we are emphasizing, this is one of our initiatives, is definitely the agency is working in supporting and the fire and compliance, and the fire, that is the federal reporting of internal assessment of risk for the agencies. So internally our agency, and every government agency has to make sure that they report to Congress, back to Congress, exactly how we have addressed our internal risk. And in the case of DCAA, internal risk is about our weaknesses and strengths, and then how we are going to do this type of audits. Now, we related that, right, the department-wide financial improvement and audit remediation, to address the longstanding material weaknesses related to government property. To this day, sometimes, especially in the Department of Defense, unfortunately, we don't have a clear opinion for the Department of Defense financial statements. Not all of them. There are still some entities that actually has passed those audits, but in the general terms, we don't have a good grade there. So we are trying to definitely help the government achieve that area, and this is one of those um, areas that we are covering, and initiatives, is that we want to provide the audit services, and dedicate our workforce to work on those audits and make sure that those financial statements become auditable, and by the OIG, and then also that they pass the audit. Next slide, please. This is the government furnished property. I have a story, a really interesting story. Just 3 months ago, just to let you know, 3 months ago, I just returned from an assignment in Korea. I went to Korea. I stayed there for almost 2 years as a internal review chief for the bases, army bases in Korea. This is not a DCA job. It's a different job with a installation management command in the Pacific. So over there, you will be surprised that I was surprised when I went there to do those audits and verify specifically the government furnished properties under those contracts actually being performed in a foreign country. That was an eye opening, I have to say. Then I couldn't. There was an instance that I couldn't even trace, a government furnished property for the completion of a contract. Nobody knew where it was. Imagine in a country like Korea, right? We have other instances where I went specifically to the contractors' locations, and I have receipts and I have evidence of the government furnished property, and the place didn't even exist. Unfortunately, those are the things that you're going to find, obviously, and those are the things that people blame, or say that that's why the Department of Defense does not have a clean audit opinion. I will not say that is the only thing. I say that is one of many, many, many other factors. But this is the part where we are paying a special attention to these type of audits and helping. In this case, right, we have recurring meetings with the IG, which is the leading entity for these type of audits. We have agreements with those IPAs, KPMG and Ernst and Young, on reliance, based on the DCA procedures. So we can definitely support that type of audit. We have some groups. We created some groups, like pilot groups on track, like the reports for the 3 non-major contractors. And I'm not talking about the big 4 or big 5 contractors. I'm talking about now the next level, the mid-sized ones. We had the major contractor testing complete, right? Those the big ones, yes, like Boeing, for example, or the big office of Lockheed Martin in different locations. So we've been doing those audits, and then we've been there. Our presence is being part of that team that is supporting that effort. Now, for the year 2026 rollout, we're going to be working with the ANS, service audit agencies and DCMA to determine the full DoD universe and identify the contractors' material to the financial statements. And actually, that meeting, we just had that meeting. We already looking into that information in that universe already. Next slide, please.
Okay. Please respond to this, that you're still listening. Hopefully everything will perform and we can record. If for some reason you're trying to respond and you can't, just let us know in the notes or wherever, or if you have a question, put it there. I think the Zoom records it that you tried, to respond to the poll and you couldn't, so you can get your CPE. We understand. Also, part of this is we know that Peggy's going to go in and talk again about a focus on the TINA audits. And we just wanted to remind people, and perhaps she would agree, that that TINA requirement becomes really significantly important, especially if you sign a certificate of cost or pricing. So just curious if that is some of the things you start, Peggy, to look for as you begin to collect everything for a potential truth in negotiations audit.
So normally we have right? We are collecting that information. Now, through the negotiations and the certification of that information is always being a requirement. Yes, we heard there's some upcoming changes because of the new NDAA negotiations or negotiated, act. But until I will have to say that until all that becomes a specific internal guidance from the federal government, then we're going to continue performing and completing those audits as we have been doing it. Now, it's interesting that you talked about the certification. One of the points that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned to you guys is that, for example, let me just give you a simple example, right? Through the negotiations, a certifying of cost pricing data, or a certification of the cost submitted for to the government, right? So many times you mentioned before about the adequacy of some of that information, especially cost of pricing data, and then the certification made by the small business or the contractors, right, on those on that subject. In the adequacy, there's a specific step, and you can go to our website. You can see our audit programs. There's one specifically for that topic, where my auditors are to follow exactly the step in the audit program. And one of the steps is that obtain evidence of the certification is a must, right? It's a requirement in the FAR regulations that you have to submit that certification. But you will be surprised how many people don't do it. And as soon as in the adequacy, we don't even see that, it's like I don't need to see anything else until I receive that. Your information is not adequate, and I'm not going to proceed with the procedures for an audit. Just simple. That's it. So until that changes, as I say, with a specific instructions on how to now adapt our procedures in accordance with the new government guidance, we're going to continue performing as we have. So one of the initiatives, what we found in this on this slide is talking about that is for the truth in negotiations audits is what we call the light support, is that the PCOs or the procurement contracting officers is helping them understanding. These people, or many of them, right, do not have a background specifically in accounting, finance, or you know, all those terms. So sometimes, many times, we have to definitely sit down with them and then reach a mutual agreement in the terms that we're using and what they mean. So we assist in the PCOs, right, in understanding what data is readily available, which is sometimes what they understand what is not exactly what we define it is. So what constraints exist, those are other terminology that what is a constraint that the contractors are experiencing, and then the FAR give us, and the DFARS, the Department of Defense supplements, or any other agency supplements to the FAR, because each one of them has their own supplements to the FARs. Provide some type of guidance, and definitely in how to understand this type of language, when and how to obtain that information. The most important thing is for the information is to be accurate, valid, and verifiable. So especially when we're working with historical data, that is really important. That's also note aside, right? That's why it's very important for the contractor to keep those records, that depending on agency, or depending on the guidance that they're using, or the supplement that they're using, is going to be either between 5 to 7 years. So it's important to definitely do those things right with the contracting officer, and we are supporting them and we are helping them. A lot of the turnover in the government, especially in the procurement groups, we new contracting officers, or people in charge of managing those contracts. So my group also provides, presentations like this or specific trainings to contracting officers and commanding groups. And so we can reach, obviously, or sometimes maybe refresher courses, right? So we can reach an agreement and we are all on the same page in terms of the information that we're going to look at and how. Um, the understanding of the contractors' actual costs or systems, we have extensive knowledge, and also we receive a lot of training in specific systems. When I used to be in Northrop Grumman, we used to use SAP or SAP, as they call it. And then I used to actually receive a lot of training on SAP, certified, training on SAP, and also provide that training to my auditors. So depending, we are very knowledgeable, and we have what we call this technical specialists and sometimes in specific systems that definitely we reach out to them as soon as we see something that is like, okay, I never worked with this system before. So, and then we provide and use them to also provide that type of training to the contracting officers. And that is the biggest initiative, because we definitely determine that knowledge is that we did not know. You didn't know that that was a requirement. It's still a requirement, and you're subject to, fulfill it. We provide, in addition to audit services, we provide advisory services to those entities, including our own other DCA defense agencies. So advisory services, as I mentioned a little bit before, we go out and definitely we sit down with them, and then they tell us exactly what they're looking for or what they need certain information for, and then we definitely tailor, what we can do within reason and within the government accounting standards for auditors, that what we can do for them, how long it's going to take, and on what basis we're going to do that that analysis or review in many cases. Next slide, please. So to give you an idea of the advisory services, professional services provided to other, offer information or data to customers. Advisory services is actually the category of the group that I'm running with the small business program, and also the non-DoD, right? Advisory services. So for example, if I receive a call from Department of Energy, they want to have an audit. Okay,
We really apologize that she's floating in and out. You're probably noticing that. We'll just hope that she comes back in. Right now, we can't hear her again because of a bad connection, and we do apologize. It's beyond our control. Maybe while we're waiting, someone had asked a question about non-traditional contractors, defense contractors, and it looks like, according to the 2026 NDA, that they're exempt to cost of pricing data, but that in the DFAR goes into effect, I believe, June 30th, 2026. So hopefully we answer that question for you. If there are any other questions, we can try to do it. DCA is also going into begin to get more involved in OTA support. So you should be aware of that. Can we flip the slides to the next polling question? So let's pull it up and give people a chance. Again, we really apologize. The technology has not been helpful to us today. So please respond that you're still listening. And most importantly, there must be a comment or notes field or question field So if you're participating, just make sure you say in there that I've, participated in all the polling questions. I'm sure we will help you as far as your CPE. So that will help. Just for your information, while we're doing this, I know this may not be helpful, but the MACPA on April 30th will have an all-day conference. I think it's called Converge, because there's other things they're doing besides GovCon. And the MACPA, and I think it'll be at the BWI Hilton. And there'll be the first session will again be probably a different speaker from DCAA on their annual update. So you will get this recording, and you'll get the slide deck. So we apologize. Just flip to the next slide. And this is where DCAA is probably one of the last slides. And this is where they are getting more involved in OTA support. So just be aware of that. It is not a FAR-based contract or subject to CAS or negotiation. And from my experience, you just look at the agreement and look at the OTA agreement and see what is permitted and what is not permitted. And you'll see that often they may use, DCAA may be used to support OTAs. We've seen this in the past. So it's just something to be aware of. You're thinking, well, it's not a FAR-based contract, and DCAA will be there. So just remember that. And everyone, you and DCAA will all have to follow whatever the particular terms and conditions of that award is. So that's the only way really to answer that. If you flip to the last slide, next slide, which is the last, DCAA continues. Okay, there we are. If you want to say something about OTAs, I apologize, but
no, that's okay. As I say, Paul, you're doing a great job as well.
Well, thank you.
Yes. So if we can go back, I'm curious about, because I always, when I do the presentations about incur cost, how to do an incur cost submission, because before I heard that at one point you guys were mentioning about our electronic portal and things like that, right?
Yes.
Then I'm just curious about that. Many people think that just because you have a fixed price contract, we don't do incur cost submission, an incur cost audit. And I was asking, did you know what type of fixed price contract do we do an incur cost audit on?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a reprice or something like that, right? There's a incentive, fixed price incentive or repricing, something like, I forget the formal term.
So for those of you, so yes, so you know that we do incur cost audits on the cost type contracts, right? Materials contracts. Those are the ones that are definitely included in that list. Then we have the labor hour contracts. We do also incur cost submission. Any type of contract where the contracting officer was creative enough to include a reimbursement item in the contract. In the fixed price world, incredible but true, nowadays, we've seen this lately, is about the fixed price contracts with progress payments, okay, that are based on the cost incur or in a percentage or completion. Those type of contracts are included now in our list of doing an incur cost audit on them.
Oh, wow.
That's what I was emphasizing a little bit about. Yep, that we've been receiving a lot of those before that, because we never had them before. But as I say, the contracting officers are getting more and more creative lately. Specifically, they're creating more and more complex, contracts with more specifications than before. I don't know if it's a normal trend, but that's what I've seen, lately. So we are doing that type of receiving those type of requests from the contracting officers to look into those.
I'll
Now,
say
the other
too,
transaction,
if there's been
I'm sorry.
modifications, I've also seen such things with modifications to firm fixed price contracts that adds completely new elements that were not part of the initial bids, because then there is a price or analysis done on that too. So just to note that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Like a change order, something like a change order. That's even if it's was an invitation for bid even, But if it's a change order, I believe it goes to cost type. So,
One of the interesting things that I've noticed also is that when you mentioned about the modifications, right, that you never seen before, just remember what we were talking about at the beginning when you guys asked the question about the Dutch related impact. That remember, many contracts were kind of canceled, stop orders, and things like that. But that doesn't mean the services are stopped. Somebody has to do them. So as you know, when they were just working with one contract that then suddenly by the government it was closed, then they have to find another source or contract to complete that contract. That's when you see now an increase in all of those modifications and changing orders, as you mentioned, and all those things. Everything is a trigger, is a domino effect coming of that from those changes.
so could you go to the last slide, I guess, just because we're wrapping this up, but I know you had some good things to mention there quickly. Thank you.
Well, this is when I was asking policy to help out with this presentation about DCA annual update. Let me just clarify the terminology in this slide is not that we're not working on this type of audits. When we are right now, the group at DCA in headquarters, they are working in planning, in preparing the plan of and the focus for the next 2027 year, right? And then they are based on the guidance and instructions received from the government and the priorities that align with the government intentions. Then we have received a different focus. These areas, that does not mean that we're not going to be working on this type of audits or services. It's just that we're not going to emphasize or initiate them by ourselves that as we usually did is just only going to be on a specific request. And then we are definitely able to do it. We're going to be able, we still include it into the planning, right? It's just that it's not going to have a bigger priority or self-initiation as we used to have before.
Okay.
Because we're still going to do cost accounting standards audits, like CAS audits. We're going to do the post-award accounting system. That's the bulk of my job. I just received, how many requests every day? So yes, we're still doing them. It's not that, but sometimes if we know a specific situations and specifically in the post-award accounting systems, um, it's as based on the complexity of the contracts and things like that. Sometimes we are the ones who reach out to them and ask, "Hey, do you think that you might need an accounting system?" It looks like one is going to be needed. Some big change happen as well because we have a lot of database information about contractors. So we are on the look and monitoring those areas as well. So, and as I say, we self-initiated those in the past. This time, we have to concentrate and definitely focus our workforce in following the guidance and instructions received from the government.
Awesome. Well, I think we better wrap this up. I think we just went over the 60-minute. And Peggy, we really appreciate your helping us today and presenting. If anyone does have, and we'll look at the questions, perhaps we'll forward that to you, Peggy, and perhaps you could answer those and we'll just put
Yes,
it up on the
please.
site.
Yes. So first of all, I apologize for the connections. I am sitting here in Fall Belvoir, and the connection is not exactly great based on the many, many security things that we have here. So
Oh,
unfortunately, that's what we have to work with. The other thing is that if you have any questions, just please provide it to me, to Paul, or and then he will forward it then to me. I will provide an answer and receive the response to those questions as well.
all right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Paul,
Yes.
do you want me to call you in a separate line? I wanted to check something with you, or
Sure. If as long as we may have to get off. So you wanna just I can give you my number. Well, I'll have to give it to you because I think this is still recording. So